There are moments in life when everything seems to move without our permission. The days change, people change, feelings rise and disappear like mist in the morning, and the path we believed was certain suddenly bends into the unknown. Many people suffer not because life is difficult, but because they try to hold still what was never meant to remain still. They chase permanence in a world that was created to move. They ask the wind to stop blowing, not realizing that the wind itself is trying to teach them something deeper than comfort. The whispering wind does not force its message, does not shout to be heard. It moves gently through the trees, across empty fields, between mountains and rivers, carrying a wisdom that can only be heard by a quiet heart. If you stand in silence long enough, you begin to understand that life speaks in the same way. It rarely announces its lessons with loud voices. Most truths arrive softly, hidden inside endings, hidden inside waiting, hidden inside the moments we once called inconvenient. A person often believes peace will come when life finally becomes predictable. They believe peace will arrive when every answer is known, when every relationship feels safe, when every tomorrow can be controlled. But true peace does not live in control. Peace lives in acceptance. It lives in learning how to sit calmly in the middle of uncertainty without allowing fear to become the ruler of the mind. Look at a leaf carried by the wind. It does not argue with the direction. It does not resist the invisible current. It does not ask why it must leave one branch and travel toward another place. It simply moves as life moves it. This does not mean weakness. It means trust. It means understanding that sometimes the path cannot be seen until we stop fighting against it. Many people spend years resisting what is already happening. They resist aging. They resist change. They resist loss. They resist the natural unfolding of life itself, and in that resistance, suffering grows. The pain is not always created by the event. Often the pain is created by the mind saying this should not be happening. Yet life continues to flow whether the mind accepts it or not. The wind teaches another lesson. It touches everything, yet it clings to nothing. It passes through forests without trying to own the trees. It moves across oceans without trying to keep the waves. In the same way, we can learn to experience life fully without gripping every moment with fear. Love deeply, but do not imprison love with possession. Enjoy happiness, but do not demand it stay forever. Feel sadness, but do not build a home inside it. When we stop clinging, we begin to breathe differently. The heart becomes lighter. The mind becomes clearer. The soul begins to understand that peace was never something to be found outside. It was something hidden beneath all the noise of resistance. Sometimes life will not make sense. Sometimes doors close without warning. Sometimes people leave without explanation. Sometimes dreams dissolve even after years of effort. In those moments, the mind wants immediate answers. But not every season of life is meant to be understood while you are inside it. Some lessons only become clear after the storm has passed. Some meanings only reveal themselves after silence has done its work. The whispering wind never asks where it is going next. It trusts the movement. And perhaps that is the lesson for all of us. Not to know every step, not to control every outcome, but to trust that even in uncertainty there can be grace. Even in change there can be beauty. Even in loss there can be transformation. Peace comes when we stop demanding that life move according to our plans. Peace comes when we learn to listen instead of forcing. Peace comes when we understand that unpredictability is not the enemy of life. It is the nature of life. And when the next uncertain moment arrives, instead of asking why everything is changing, perhaps it is enough to become still, to listen carefully, and to hear the gentle whisper carried on the wind reminding you that peace was never in controlling the journey, but in learning how to flow with it. Peace comes through acceptance. True inner peace begins when we stop resisting change and accept that life is naturally uncertain. Many people spend their lives searching for peace in places where peace can never truly remain. They believe it waits at the end of achievement, inside perfect relationships, within financial security, or somewhere beyond the next carefully planned moment. They convince themselves that once life becomes stable, predictable, and comfortable, the restless movement inside them will finally become still. Yet life rarely follows the shape of human expectation. Just when everything seems settled, something shifts. A door closes. A person changes, a dream fades. A new uncertainty appears. In those moments, many discover that the peace they built depended entirely on circumstances staying the same. Because life continues to change, that fragile peace disappears with it. True peace is different. It does not depend on the world becoming quiet. It begins when the heart learns not to fight the nature of life itself. Everything in existence moves. Seasons change without asking. Rivers never hold the same water. Morning becomes evening without hesitation. Even the strongest mountains are slowly reshaped by time. Yet the human mind often demands permanence from a world that has never promised to stand still. It says this moment should last. This person should remain. This feeling should never leave. From that silent demand, suffering begins to grow. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It does not mean becoming passive or refusing to care. It means seeing reality clearly without arguing with it. It means understanding that life can still be meaningful even when it does not unfold according to our wishes. Acceptance allows a person to face change without becoming broken by it. It creates a space between what happens outside and what is disturbed within. In that space, peace begins to take root. When a storm passes through a forest, the rigid branch often snaps while the flexible one bends and survives. The same is true in human life. A mind that insists everything must happen in a certain way becomes fragile. A heart that learns to bend with change becomes stronger. Acceptance creates that flexibility. It allows a person to say, this is not what I expected, but I will meet it with awareness instead of fear. This simple shift can transform suffering into understanding. Often people believe acceptance means approving of pain or pretending loss does not hurt. But acceptance is not denial. It is honesty. It is the courage to say this hurts, this is difficult, this is not what I wanted, and still remain open to life. It is choosing not to create a second layer of suffering by resisting what already exists. The wound may still be there, but the struggle against the wound begins to soften. Peace is not found when life finally becomes predictable, because life may never become predictable. Peace is found when the heart no longer needs life to be predictable in order to remain calm. It is found when a person stops asking the world to become different before allowing themselves to be at ease. The moment acceptance enters, something inside becomes lighter. The mind grows quieter. The soul begins to understand that peace was never hidden in control. It was waiting in surrender all along. Suffering grows from resistance. Much of human pain comes not from events themselves, but from fighting against what is already happening. Much of the suffering people carry is not born from life itself, but from the struggle against what life brings. Pain may arrive in many forms. It may come through loss, disappointment, illness, separation, or the collapse of something once trusted. These experiences can be deeply painful on their own, yet the mind often adds another layer of suffering by refusing to accept what has already happened. It says this should not be happening. It says this is unfair. It says life was supposed to be different. In that resistance, pain begins to multiply. There is a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is often unavoidable because it is part of being alive. Every person will eventually face endings, uncertainty, and change. No one walks through life untouched by sorrow. But suffering often grows from the way the mind holds pain. When the mind clings to what was, compares reality to expectation, or fights against the present moment, pain deepens into something heavier. What could have passed like a wave becomes a storm that remains for years. Imagine holding a stone in your hand. At first, the stone may feel manageable. But if you continue holding it for hours, your hand becomes tired. If you hold it for days in your mind, it can feel unbearable. The stone may be paying it down, but the suffering comes from never putting it down. Many people do this with old grief, regret, anger, and fear. They replay moments that cannot be changed. They argue with memories that have already passed. They resist the truth of what is. In doing so, they remain trapped in a pain that life may have already begun asking them to release. Resistance often comes from the illusion of control. People believe that by mentally fighting reality, they can somehow undo it. They believe that if they refuse to accept a loss, the loss will hurt less. But the opposite often happens. The more they resist, the more tightly they bind themselves to their suffering. The heart becomes exhausted because it is carrying both the original pain and the endless struggle against it. This does not mean a person should feel nothing. It does not mean sadness should be ignored or grief should be silenced. Emotions are natural. They are part of the human experience. The problem begins when emotions are turned into identity. Instead of saying I feel sadness, the mind says I am my sadness. Instead of saying I am experiencing fear, the mind says fear is all I am. This attachment can make temporary pain feel permanent. When a person begins to observe pain without fighting it, something changes. The pain may still exist, but it no longer controls the entire inner world. By simply allowing the moment to be what it is, the grip of suffering starts to loosen. Acceptance creates space where struggle once lived. In that space, healing quietly begins. Life cannot always protect us from pain, but we can learn not to create more suffering than necessary. The heart becomes lighter when it stops wrestling with reality. The mind becomes calmer when it no longer demands that life be different before peace can appear. Sometimes the greatest freedom is not in changing what happened, but in ending the resistance that keeps the pain alive. Let go of attachment. Like the wind touches everything but holds nothing, peace grows when we experience life without clinging too tightly. Many people move through life believing that happiness comes from holding on. They hold on to people they fear losing, moments they wish would last forever, identities they have outgrown, and dreams that no longer belong to the person they are becoming. They believe that if they cling tightly enough, life will remain exactly as they want it to be. Yet life has never been still. It flows like a river that refuses to keep the same shape. The more tightly a person tries to hold the water, the faster it slips through their fingers. In this struggle, the heart becomes tired because it was never meant to carry the weight of constant attachment. Attachment often begins in innocence. A person experiences something beautiful and naturally wants it to stay. A joyful moment arrives and the mind whispers, I never want this to end. Love enters the heart and fear quietly follows behind it, asking what will happen if this disappears. Success arrives and anxiety begins to guard it. Even peace itself can become something the mind tries to possess. What begins as appreciation slowly transforms into clinging. The problem is not in loving life. The problem begins when love turns into ownership. The wind offers a different lesson. It moves through forests, touches rivers, brushes against mountains, and passes through open windows, yet it does not try to possess anything it touches. It experiences everything fully while remaining free. In the same way, a person can learn to live deeply without holding so tightly that every change becomes a wound. Letting go does not mean caring less. Sometimes it means caring in a purer way without fear controlling the heart. When attachment grows strong, every change feels like a threat. A small distance in a relationship feels like abandonment. A change in routine feels like loss. The passing of time feels like something being stolen. The mind begins to live in fear because it knows everything it clings to can eventually change. This fear can quietly steal the joy of the very things being held. Instead of enjoying the present, the person becomes consumed by protecting it. Instead of loving freely, they love anxiously. To let go is not to reject life. It is to trust it. It means understanding that not everything is meant to stay in the same form forever. Some people enter our lives to remain and others arrive only to teach. Some seasons bring abundance and others bring emptiness so something new can grow. When we stop demanding permanence from temporary things, the heart becomes softer. It no longer breaks with every shift because it understands that change is part of love itself. A flower is beautiful partly because it does not last forever. A sunset touches the soul because it fades. Music moves the heart because each note disappears as the next one arrives. Life carries the same sacred impermanence. When we stop trying to imprison every beautiful thing, we begin to truly experience it. Letting go is not losing. Sometimes letting go is the first moment of freedom. It creates room for peace where fear once lived. It allows love to breathe. It allows life to move. And in that openness, a person begins to discover that peace does not come from holding on to everything, but from learning how to love without needing to own. Uncertainty can be a teacher. Life's unexpected moments often carry the deepest lessons, even when they are not immediately understood. Life often teaches its deepest lessons in ways that are quiet, unexpected, and difficult to understand in the moment they arrive. Most people imagine wisdom will come through clear answers, planned experiences, or moments of obvious revelation. They believe understanding should feel comforting and immediate, but life rarely unfolds in such a simple way. Often the most meaningful lessons come disguised as uncertainty, disappointment, silence, or sudden change. What first feels like disruption may later reveal itself as transformation. Many people fear uncertainty because it removes the illusion of control. The human mind feels safer when it can predict what comes next. It wants familiar patterns, clear paths, and outcomes it can trust. When life moves in an unexpected direction, fear can quickly take over. Closed door can feel like failure. Waiting can feel like punishment. Loss can feel meaningless. Yet uncertainty often becomes the space where growth begins because it forces a person to look beyond what was once comfortable. A seed buried in the earth might appear forgotten. From the surface, it seems hidden in darkness with no movement at all. But beneath the soil, something important is happening. The shell begins to break so new life can emerge. If the seed could think like a human mind, it might believe it was being destroyed. It might resist the pressure of the soil and fear the loss of its old form. Yet what feels like an ending is often the beginning of something greater. Human life can unfold in the same way. Moments that seem confusing may be preparing the soul for a deeper awakening. Some of the greatest lessons come from the seasons we never wanted. Patience can be learned in waiting. Compassion can be born from pain. Strength can be discovered through loss. Humility can rise from failure. Without uncertainty, many people would never discover the hidden parts of themselves. Comfort often keeps the inner world asleep, but uncertainty has a way of waking it. The difficulty is that these lessons rarely reveal themselves immediately. When a storm is happening, it is hard to understand why it came. In the middle of heartbreak, it is difficult to see what the heart is learning. During loneliness, it can seem as if life has become empty. But with time, many people look back and realize that what once felt like their darkest season was also the beginning of their deepest understanding. The pain they tried to avoid became the teacher they needed most. Uncertainty also teaches surrender. It reminds us that not every answer can be forced. Some truths only arrive when the mind becomes still enough to receive them. When people stop demanding instant clarity, they often begin to notice that life has been guiding them all along in ways they could not see before. The path becomes clearer not because everything is known, but because trust begins to replace fear. There is wisdom hidden inside what cannot be predicted. There is growth hidden inside what feels uncomfortable. There is peace hidden inside what first feels uncertain. When a person stops seeing uncertainty as an enemy and begins to see it as a teacher, life itself becomes a sacred conversation. And sometimes the moments that once felt like life was falling apart were actually the moments life was gently leading them toward who they were meant to become. Flow with life instead of controlling it. Real calm appears when we trust life's movement instead of trying to control every outcome. Many people spend their lives trying to control everything around them. They try to control outcomes, control people, control timing, and even control how they themselves should feel. They create careful plans for the future and believe that if every step is arranged perfectly, they can avoid pain and secure peace. Yet life has never moved according to human certainty. No matter how carefully a person prepares, unexpected moments still arrive. Plans change. People change. Opportunities appear without warning. The more tightly someone tries to control life, the more exhausting life can become. Control often feels like protection. It gives the mind the illusion that uncertainty can be prevented. When life feels fragile, controlling details can seem like a way to feel safe. Some people control conversations so they never feel misunderstood. Some control relationships so they never feel abandoned. Some control routines so they never feel lost. But beneath this need for control, there is often fear. The fear says that if life moves in a way that cannot be predicted, something will be lost. Yet in trying to control everything, people sometimes lose the very peace they are trying to protect. Imagine standing in a river and trying to stop the water with your hands. The harder you push against the current, the more force you feel against you. The river does not become still because someone demands it. It simply continues its movement. Life behaves in the same way. It has its own rhythm, its own timing, and its own direction. Fighting that movement can create constant inner tension. A person may appear calm on the outside while feeling deeply exhausted within. Flowing with life does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean giving up responsibility or refusing to make choices. It means understanding the difference between wise action and fearful control. Wise action allows a person to participate in life with awareness. Fearful control tries to force life into a shape that feels safe. One creates peace, while the other often creates struggle. When people learn to flow with life, they begin to respond rather than react. Instead of resisting every unexpected change, they become more open to what each moment is asking of them. They stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this moment teaching me?" That small change can transform how life is experienced. Challenges may still come, but they no longer feel like personal attacks. They become part of the natural movement of existence. A tree offers a beautiful example. During a strong wind, the tree that refuses to bend may break. The tree that moves with the wind often remains standing. Flexibility becomes strength. The same is true in the human spirit. A person who can adapt without losing their center often finds a deeper peace than someone who tries to control every storm. Flowing with life also creates trust. It allows the heart to understand that not everything needs to be known right now. Some paths only reveal themselves one step at a time. Some answers only come after patience. Some blessings arrive only after surrender. The mind may still want certainty, but the soul often grows through mystery. Peace does not come from mastering every outcome. It comes from learning how to remain centered while life continues to change. When a person stops fighting the current and begins to move with it, life feels less like a battle and more like a journey. And in that surrender, a quieter and deeper kind of freedom begins to appear.